Hi, Black Hollywood Live fans. Today we're talking about Kim Kardashian's robbery. Chris Brown's gun problems might be over. We'll talk about that and more on Justice is Served.
You are tuned in to Black Hollywood Live. Justice is served.
All day.
Hello, Justice fans. Welcome to Justice is Served. We're talking all about the latest in legal news this past week. Thanks for joining. My name is Chelsea Galicia. I'm an attorney joined by my co-host and fellow attorney, Shaka Smith. Hey there, how's it going?
Great, glad to be here again.
Great. All right, we got to get started on this most disturbing story. Kim Kardashian gets robbed at gunpoint. I have to say that it is one of my biggest nightmares.
Yeah, and I'm glad we started with the Kanye song. We know that he had to leave the stage and go rush to be by her side.
I mean, just and I've thought of this, like, it's a home invasion style robbery.
Yeah.
She was basically home alone at a rented apartment in Paris. Two gunmen, masked, come in.
Bound her, put her in the bathtub, and yeah.
I read, and I don't know because she hasn't officially released very many comments, but she asked the concierge who was in the room at the time and also handcuffed and held at gunpoint whether they were going to die, and the concierge said, I don't know. That just is the most terrifying thing I could ever imagine, and whether or not it's, you know, fair for people to blame her for showing off the jewelry on social media is a topic for conversation, but legally she is a victim of a really heinous, terrible robbery. It has become so sort of well known.
Well, you would think she is legally the victim, but
the way that some people are talking about it, you think
maybe otherwise.
Right. Word of this has infiltrated popular culture and the law so much that even the Supreme Court, the justices on the Supreme Court, who we don't normally think of as very up to the date on cultural
pop culture savvy,
are commenting on it in open, well, I don't know if in open court, but during oral arguments of a real life case. This happened yesterday. Justice Stephen Breyer all the justices were hearing a case, and the case is about some California guy who wiped somebody's account clean, a bank account clean, and his defense for bank theft or bank fraud is that you can't steal from a bank if the bank's money is insured and the bank will get the money back anyway.
Well, it
creative.
Seems like it's a great, wonderful argument for maybe a 7-year-old. No one's missing the money. Why is there a problem with me having it?
The other problem with that, besides it being ridiculous, is that if it's not bank fraud, then you've just committed insurance fraud. So you 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Who cares? You're going to jail, buddy.
Yeah, and we know obviously just because something's insured does not mean it can be stolen without any punishment.
So that's the point that Stephen Breyer was making when he asked the defendant's attorney, so if Kim Kardashian's thief assumed that the jewels were insured, does that make him not a thief after all? Which obviously was sort of a tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic question.
But he also said, you know, if this in fact happened, which I thought was interesting, because that's been really, some of the online chatter has been whether or not this was a hoax.
I mean, the idea that she would have done this for publicity, I think, is silly to me. Of all the things that woman is able to do to garner publicity, this I don't think would have ever been on her radar.
I'm just shocked that the justice would be paying so close attention to this, that he's even hearing the rumors of what's happening regarding this.
Yeah, or I think that he's just being careful as an officer of the court to assume that anything has been proven when a court has not found that somebody has been guilty of a robbery.
Perhaps,
so he's sort of like...
But I wonder if he's on some blogs or on TMZ.
I mean, because an officer of the court is very well trained in assuming that a crime has not occurred, a defendant has not committed a crime unless it's been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I think that kind of language may just be in his vernacular to sort of be suspicious and sarcastic and not to take news stories as fact.
Yeah, well, I thought he was discussing the case with enough distance and hyperbole that, you know, that qualification wasn't necessary. I think he's probably well aware of some of the rumors surrounding the story.
And some of the question is, so if she is making this up, what kind of legal consequences would she be facing?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly, obviously, filing a false police report, but, you know, this happened in Paris, so... You know,
laws are different.
Yeah,
there,
the laws are different there, but it's almost, I guess, sort of like a Ryan Lochte situation again, if she were to have made this up.
Which I personally very much doubt. The theory that sounds more plausible is that this is an inside job, which would almost make me more terrified if I were her, that somebody that she trusted would betray her to this extent. We'll just have to stay tuned and see how the facts unfold here.
Yeah, I mean, just it's so bizarre, but what a huge case, because you just don't hear of people of that stature with that much security, you know, getting violated in that way. So.
Yeah, so we will keep paying close attention to that story, and we'll of course hope that there are arrests and that we will maybe get some insight into the France's legal system when we see how this goes down there, because it would be prosecuted by the French courts. All right, speaking of guns and moving on to Chris Brown, we talked last month about Chris Brown allegedly pulling a gun on a woman, Bailey Curran.
Yeah.
And where has that case gone now?
Well, it looks like they don't have enough evidence. So the LA prosecutor does not have enough evidence from the police to move forward. So the police asked the DA for an extension for about 2 more weeks to give them the evidence that they have, believing that they don't have enough for the DA to move forward. Now, what we do know is that there was that duffel bag, that infamous duffel bag that was thrown out with 2 guns. But they're not able to tie these 2 guns to Chris Brown, and as a result, their case is very weak. It relies mainly on the testimony of Bailey Curran, who's had her own legal issues as well.
Right. The prosecution saying that her story is kind of weak, her credibility, sort of reputation is weak, and the fact that she went around and blabbed to all these media outlets makes this look a little funky, and that it might not be not just worth their time, but because more evidence hasn't come in. Maybe there was no Chris Brown fingerprint on any of the guns.
Well, and that's what's bizarre to me. Not bizarre, it actually makes complete sense. I am almost certain he called his attorney in that moment before he threw any bag out the window, and maybe was possibly advised to do that. And so now there's no evidence that can really connect him with even the guns and the use of the guns. And so as a result of that duffel bag throwing out the window, the case is very weak against him.
So very likely this could be the last time that we talk about this case, unless something miraculous happens or Chris Brown turns around and sues the woman.
Yeah, and certainly that might be something he'd want to do to have a chilling effect, but you know, a chilling effect on people making false claims, but it might be a chilling effect on people making valid claims, who knows?
Right, or I guess if the police find that this story was really made up, she could be prosecuted for filing a false police report, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a number of ways that this could go down, but I would say 75% chance this is it. We don't hear about this
I think
again.
it doesn't go anywhere,
All right. Well, now let's talk about school, shall we? Are you looking for a career in tech, maybe business, data, design, or marketing? Trying to get that promotion or raise?
Who isn't?
Yeah, of course. So to excel in your career, you need 21st century training and skills. General Assembly is the largest and most respected school worldwide for people seeking to grow their talents and master the marketplace. Whether it's learning remotely, online, or in person at one of their beautiful campuses, you can join the 350,000 people. That's a lot. This place must, if it hasn't been around that long, is certainly making progress very quickly, because 350 students is really something to be commended for.
I think it speaks to its effectiveness,
So that many people, 350,000 people, have already gotten the training needed to propel careers in tech and business. More than 2,500 companies worldwide hire GA's graduates. And get this, this part is always really astonishing to me. 99% of graduates participate in their GA career services, land a new role in their field within 6 months of starting their job search.
And that's huge. You don't want to pay for school and then not get something from it.
I know. How much did we all pay for our education?
Let's
Some of
not
us
talk
like
about
$200,000, and there were no promises there, right? Take control of your talent and career now. Find out more at ga.co/geek. That's ga.co/geek, geek spelled GEEK. Enter the promo code GEEK to save on your first class, workshop, or event. Once again, that's ga.co/geek, code word geek. Thank you so much, General Assembly, for supporting Black Hollywood Live and for helping make this show free to our viewers each and every week. Well, each and every week that they're supporting us, right? Thank you so much, General Assembly. All right, so now let's move on to the Supreme Court speaks on the NCAA. I'm not that much of a basketball fan. All I knew was that the NCAA doesn't pay the players any money for playing because it's supposed to be, amateur. But in exchange, they're supposed to get a great college education and a good shot at going to the NBA. That's sort of the fantasy that I lived in until I saw a John Oliver episode of Last Week Goodnight where what is it called? Last Week Tonight. That's what it is. Where he broke down just how much money is made in the NCAA between the coaches' salaries and even the company that makes the ladder that they climb to cut down the net after the winning game. How much money is made and how the players have zero rights. So they don't get paid. Their name, their likeness, their image can be used. Obviously on TV.
So the NCAA will license to video games these likenesses and make money that way, but the players don't see a dime of it.
Right. And then the show talked about how in reality, they don't get that great of an education because they're put in really ridiculously easy classes in order to make room for them to have lots of rigorous training sessions.
Yeah, so they're paying for your education, but an education you're not really getting. So if something happens, injury or whatever befalls you, and you don't make it to the professional league, you're really kind of, stuck.
You haven't really learned much in the way of skills that are going to help you out in the job place.
Yeah.
All right, so there was so much more to it. I was just really appalled. And so then it was great when I saw that there was a class action case taken up by NCAA players to try and get some rights, whether it be money or whether it just be the ability to own their own name and likeness. So there was a trial in August of 2014. And in that trial, the judge thought that the way things are right now is unreasonable. It is unfair. That was good news to the players. But then things got a little dicey when it went up to the next level, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Do you remember what they said?
Well, the Ninth Circuit found that they were doing more of a balancing test, with the freedom of speech and whether or not the players, as amateurs, needed to be compensated, and the compensation, whether it had to be small or big. And I think that's where they erred, was making the argument about the amount of compensation for these players.
So it wasn't really great news for the players. It wasn't really good news for the NCAA. They had the choice of, going back to the trial court level, but instead they opted to kick it up or try to kick it up to the Supreme Court to hear out this antitrust case and make the decision. But Supreme Court denied it. So what does that really mean?
So what it means is that case is now going to go back to the lower court for determination as to what's going to take place. So that lower court, that opinion holds, and then they're going to kick it back to be reviewed.
So it just, I guess, the Supreme Court didn't want to take up this one issue. Or it could also mean that they see in the docket a better case that could speak to this issue that they want to make a decision on. So it doesn't really mean anything good or bad. I saw a quote from an attorney for the NCAA who said that the court agreed that something. I'm like, no, the court did not agree that. I sometimes lawyers just make me giggle/be annoyed at some of the ridiculous interpretations they have when the Supreme Court declines to hear the case. But be that as it may, the case is not over, thank goodness. It'll just go back down to the trial court to figure out, hopefully, not say once and for all, because no matter what the trial court...
It won't be ending because it's not up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it'll go probably back up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Ninth Circuit is the region out west here, which tends to be liberal, and I would not be surprised if the Court of Appeals would side with the players, because the reality of how much exploitation of these people there is just so outrageous.
And the fact that they can come out of college with very little education and not much money at all, and so it makes it hard for them to find a living, and they're kind of left to some degree very aimless.
Yeah, and the whole idea that they go from college to the NBA like it's a nice funnel or breeze right in is a total fantasy.
Yeah.
The statistics are exceedingly low, like maybe it's 1%.
Yeah, extremely low.
And so that's why I think that this is straight exploitation of people who have a big dream but may not realize that they're not going to get that great education that they're promised, and that the chances of them getting into the NBA really are not that great.
Yeah, and certainly it allows them to, if they don't make it, if they have some money from these years, they can maybe retrain and go to another educationally retrain if they haven't been given that proper education.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm rooting for the players on that one. The NCAA. I mean, what do you think? Is there, if they have, a strongest argument for keeping things the way they are?
I mean, simply their strongest argument is that these are amateur players, and that competition, money-wise, in these years that are formative to them becoming professional, is somehow antithetical to professional, whatever professional sports league they're going to.
So, I mean, okay, let's flesh this out a little. Yeah. Let's just say they're allowed to be paid, but it's something pretty minimal. As long as it's all schools pay the same amount, maybe, so that doesn't create any unfairness among schools. That whether it's 25,000, 10,000,
But then, if you're looking to the burden on certain schools, then that might be an issue that they're going to have to parse out, whether or not them paying is a burden on particular schools.
But it's so crazy that compared to how much these coaches make, and there's like a whole staff of coaches and the medical team, and there is a lot of money being made. I mean, maybe it's the NCAA that should pay rather than the schools, but I can't see how they would win on keeping things the same. I mean, unless we get a Scalia 2.0 who says the Constitution doesn't give any rights to amateur sports players, too bad, guys.
Yeah, I mean, constitutionally, I think that their arguments aren't strong, but at the same time, I see that they have arguments, and I don't know if the freedom of speech argument is gonna wash here.
Yeah, I don't see how that does either. Even with a conservative, Supreme Court justice. I mean, it's interesting that this case could hinge on who wins the next presidential election.
Yeah, certainly.
Obviously, Hillary Clinton would like to put a liberal justice to replace Scalia, whereas Trump would replace Scalia with, basically another version of Scalia.
Well, and I think whoever replaces Scalia on the Hillary Clinton side would probably be someone a little bit more neutral, like Merrick Garland. So you're not necessarily assured of which way they're going to rule, but I don't think they're going to replace Scalia with a liberal. It's going to be someone a little bit more middle of the road.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Okay. And so, of course, it wouldn't be a week here in America unless we saw a story of the police treating somebody brutally.
Yeah.
This week is no different. And we have video that we're going to show of a case, but just to give you some background on here, this is the case of a man from Ohio, Pele Smith, and we're going to show the video and then talk about the claim that he has now filed. So let's go ahead and roll the video. Oh, all right. So. What we'll see soon is the means in which he was arrested.
Yeah.
And this case now is a federal civil rights case.
Yeah, because he's suing
shouted for his mother to look
here we
after
go.
his son. Police handcuffed him from behind and escorted him to a cruiser. Suddenly,
just okay.
one of the officers...
All right, we can cut. So it's just so horrifying to watch that.
Like classic excessive force.
Yeah. So in case you were listening, what everyone else saw is the officers already have him cuffed. There doesn't seem to be anybody around. He's walking towards a police cruiser. He doesn't seem to be struggling with the police, trying to get away. There's a number of police there, so it doesn't seem that the situation is out of control at all. You see from the dash cam video inside the cop cruiser that they're walking towards the car when, just seemingly out of nowhere, the Pele Smith's face just gets clobbered into the windshield so hard that the windshield immediately cracks. And so he has now sued the officer that pushed him into the windshield that hard is Officer Zachary Farnick, who said he didn't realize that he had used so much force, or he didn't really mean to. It was some really weak argument.
Yeah.
I thought that if you were going to defend yourself, the defense would have been that that level of force was called for in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be, I don't know my own strength. It's not necessarily, it's not a defense at all.
Not a good one at all, because the only reason that any kind of force like that would be acceptable is if, he was struggling, he being Pele Smith.
And I think they did kind of allege that there was some sort of struggle and that he was uncooperative with the officer. That's what was alleged, but from the video, we don't see that.
And it's just funny to me how so many people on the police side say, well, the video doesn't show the whole story.
Yeah.
And in this case, I mean, I understand, okay, maybe that's the case in some situations.
But typically we like video because usually it shows the whole story.
I mean,
that's kind of why we like it.
This shows clear as day what was happening right before. I mean, maybe it doesn't show what happened. It doesn't for sure show what was said, or maybe some of what was done in the struggle when they were actually arresting him. Yeah. But it's not like the officers had any reason to fear for their lives. It's not that they were arresting somebody who was out waving a gun or shooting anybody. He was being arrested for drugs.
Yeah, and maybe he did say something to inflame the officer, and later on the officer got his moment, but that's not what officers are supposed to do.
Right, and the accusation was that he swallowed drugs to obstruct justice and things of that nature. But
and he did plead guilty to those things, and was I think he was given probation. So, however, the fact that he was guilty of what they were picking him up for or arrested for does not justify the use of excessive force.
Right. So just because he was guilty doesn't mean that the police can also wouldn't be guilty.
Just because you're a guilty suspect, I mean, it turns out you're guilty doesn't mean you should be shot and killed.
Right. So because, I mean, it seems to me that really the criteria is met. Force was used to arrest him. Force was excessive given the circumstances. It caused him injury. He went to the hospital after, got treated for that. That really, those are the basics. This is a federal case, and I think that that's basically the federal rules too. They're the same as California. So I see that he should be successful in this case. There weren't specific damages that were requested. You want to take a guess as to what fair damages might be?
I think it'll probably run in the six figures, and I think part of that is that deterrent effect,
Yeah. All right. I hope that you are right about that. All right. So now turning to a totally different kind of legal conundrum. Maybe you're a good person to ask because you're on IMDb, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever, and maybe I'm asking the wrong person because you're a man, not a woman, but have you ever felt discriminated against because of your age?
Well, no. And
Why am I not surprised?
But it is a big problem in the industry, especially for females.
Right. So there is a new law that was recently signed by Governor Brown that is intended to fight age discrimination that women in the industry have been facing. Yeah. They have complained a long time to the union that they're not getting jobs because of their age being a readily available fact on IMDb.
Yeah.
You think that's a fair complaint? Or have you heard that complaint amongst friends in the industry?
I haven't heard that complaint, but is it a fair worry? Of course it's a fair worry. Legally, however, I don't think this will stand, because I don't see how you can legally prohibit someone from putting something online that's factual. That's true.
Yeah, so that's sort of just, what happened. So there was a lot of pressure from the union in the industry to get this law passed.
Yeah, naturally the union wants to protect its workers, so yeah, it makes sense.
So it looks like, and a lot of the articles out there about this is just a clear, blatant violation of the First Amendment, free speech. How can you make somebody liable for damages for putting out a fact like somebody's age?
Yeah.
And I can see that, except when you look a little bit closer. Because, first of all, we all know that there are exceptions to, I think, virtually all the amendments.
Yeah.
Maybe not the soldiering quarters during time of war. I haven't seen an exception to that. But all of them have exceptions. Yeah. For example, it would be against the law for me to disclose a disease, Shaka, that you have, that you may actually have. Yeah. People put out there, somebody else has an STD, and even if that is true, yeah, when you put that out there, you can still be sued for that.
Yeah, and I think that is of the kind that's different than age. But I see how it's trying to work the argument towards that.
So the reason that you don't put out somebody's factual medical history or diagnosis is because it's damaging to them,
yeah,
socially, economically, and in this case, putting a woman's age out there. And the women that we're talking about are not like A-list celebrities who everybody knows. These are, women lesser known.
Yeah, well, that's who it's affecting. Obviously, no one cares how old Angelina Jolie is. She's still a big box office draw. But yeah, for women who are still kind of coming up through the industry and competing for smaller roles, that's who it's really affecting.
Right. So they are harmed when people know their age, and they're harmed economically. And in this world, we care a lot about economic injuries to people.
I just think it's so hard to pinpoint, because age in of itself is not something like an STD, whereas there's no good STD news. But
you could. The argument is a fact. An STD is a fact if it's a fact.
But it's a negative fact, whereas age in of itself is not a negative fact.
I wish you could be a woman for a day, and
if she's 20, if her age is 18, if her age is 12. But age in of itself is not a negative fact.
I think that you probably would know more than I how much age is an issue in the industry, is it not?
Yeah, certainly.
And if they can show that there is a sort of a history that it's a real issue that age discrimination occurs, then I think that they have standing. Now, the other part of that is that even if you create an exception to an amendment, you have to show that that exception is really narrowly tailored to the interest that it's trying to advance, right? I sound like my law school professor right now. And the way that I see it, this law was very narrowly written, because even though it uses general language like Hollywood databases, the reality is the only one that fits it is IMDb.
Yeah.
And IMDb is a commercial enterprise, so they're subject to different First Amendment rules.
Well, why are they? Because they're a commercial enterprise, they have to be engaging in commercial speech, however.
Well, so wouldn't anything that a commercial enterprise put out there about, they're not promoting or having these actresses on their website for fun.
No, IMDb actually is sort of a Wikipedia for actors and actresses. So if you're going to Wikipedia, is that considered commercial speech? Well,
the attorney's argument is that they're intertwined, the free version and the paid version.
Well, now they have a paid version that is more in line with commercial speech. And their argument is the two are intertwined. But I would argue the two are not intertwined. One is a paid version. One is a version that people do use.
I think it's fair to say that the free version is a marketing tool for the paid version. There's a lot of companies out there that offer a free version of something that they're doing as a way to entice you or to build a name for the brand, and then funnel people to a sales or a paid for version.
But I would say the paid for version only makes sense for industry professionals. And so I'm going to guess, and this is a guess, that the majority of viewership of IMDb are the general public rather than people in the industry. So I think that being a platform for the IMDb Pro, which is a commercial industry professional thing, that's probably only targeting a very small percentage of people that are viewing the IMDb page. I think the majority of people that view it as a Wikipedia for actors and actresses.
Well, it seems the consensus out there in the legal field is really what you're saying. I guess maybe because I empathize with these women, I'm trying to see all the ways in which I think that the union and this law are constitutional.
I do empathize, but at the same time, who are you saying is getting discriminated against?
Women.
All women? Is it women over 40? Is it women over 30? Women between 15 and 18? So I think that is where you also get in some gray area.
Well, any form of age discrimination, doesn't matter the age, age discrimination is an issue that is well known, like in the courts, and it receives about the middle level of scrutiny.
But they are arguing specifically it's really going to be affecting women over a certain age, women over 40, and so that being part of their argument, I don't think helps them.
So you think that the law would be narrowly tailored if it said that women who are over the age of 40 can have their ages withdrawn or hidden?
But then again, if your age is not there, then the assumption is you're over 40.
Oh, man.
Ultimately, I think the law won't stand.
Oh, all right. Well, we will see. Probably not for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens between now and then. Because IMDb could just say, fine, we'll do it.
Yeah, because I believe, what's the date? Is it January 1st?
It goes into effect in January, yeah.
So they can either say, we'll do it, or they can say, no, we won't do it, and they have their own, I believe, arbitration process.
All right. Okay, and now we don't normally do this, but we have a movie recommendation because it covers so well a lot of the issues that we talk about. We're going to show you the trailer for Ava DuVernay's latest movie that's coming out this Friday on Netflix about the criminal justice system and specifically about the 13th Amendment. So if we're ready, we'll roll the trailer and then talk a little bit more about why we think it's so important for you to see it.
In the world are locked up here in the land of the free.
Khalif Browder was walking home from a party when he was stopped by police.
Then they said, we're going to take you to the precinct, and most likely we're going to let you go home, and then I never went home.
The 13th Amendment to the Constitution makes it unconstitutional for someone to be held as a slave. There are exceptions, including criminals.
The loophole was immediately exploited. What you got after that was a rapid transition to a mythology of black criminality.
Some people got the real problem.
Animals, beasts that needed to be controlled.
You better believe it.
I'm only human.
It became virtually impossible for a politician to run and appear soft on crime.
The kinds of kids that are called super predators.
Millions of dollars will be allocated for prison and jail facilities.
3 strikes and you are out.
It was an enormous burden on the black community, but it also violated a sense of core fairness.
Some people got the real problem.
The states were required to keep these prisons filled, even if nobody was committing a crime.
It's so difficult to talk about mass incarceration because it has become heavily monetized.
We've talked about that recently on this show.
Taking people from prison, putting them in community corrections, parole and probation.
How much progress is it really if now there's a private company making money off the GPS monitor?
So disgusting.
Now more African Americans under criminal supervision than all the slaves back in the 1850s.
That's an amazing statistic.
We are the products of the history that our ancestors chose. byproducts of that set of choices that we have to understand in order to escape from it.
I don't know if it's normal to cry during a documentary, but I feel like I probably will.
I think it's, I think it's so great that Ava DuVernay is getting this on. It's going to be on Netflix, so it's going to be, people can see it.
Easily accessible starting Friday, October 7th. And
I think it'll put a lot of things in context for a lot of people.
And a lot of perspective in it. It will, because we've talked here about, mass incarceration, private prisons, how recently the federal government said that they're not going to renew contracts with private prison companies.
And at the end of the day, it's like, what does that all mean? I don't think people understand what that means, like in a very practical and real sense.
And even, I feel a little bit sometimes to this audience, we're a little bit preaching to the choir because obviously you have an interest in the law, maybe you have some background in it, you already know what the 13th Amendment says. But I think that the more of us that know these facts and statistics, like the one that Cory Booker mentioned about how the fact that there are now more black people in prison today than there were ever slaves. To know things like that and to be able to cite things like that gives us more depth when we're having conversations with people who just don't yet get it.
Yeah, and even amongst ourselves, because I consider myself someone who's kind of plugged in. But years ago, I heard about mass incarceration, and I knew it was a problem. I just didn't know what it meant, you know? And so now you see the effects of mass incarceration, and you see what it means in people's lives, that they're essentially exploited because they may have committed a crime.
Somebody makes a profit of keeping them in jail. And the other part that I like about it is that I saw an interview of somebody connected with the movie, and that one of the issues that they talk about is ALEC. ALEC is like kind of this, I don't know, not so secret society, American Legislative Exchange Council. And I really think it's important for everybody to understand who they are. They're really a collection of businesses that write legislation. Basically, they hire politicians by paying for their campaigns, and about how that entity has authored a lot of the laws that have led to this mass incarceration that we've seen. And that there have been a lot of activists that have been really effective in reducing ALEC's power. I don't want to go too far into it, but it is. But my belief is that they're going to give us some real things that we can do. They're not just going to inform us and tell us how terrible that this funnel between slavery and mass incarceration has been. They're going to give us tools and I think resources of things that we can do.
Yeah, because if it's not an issue that is hitting home for you, you may be alert to it, but not doing anything about it.
And I think I suspect that with this film that you will be equipped to be able to do something about it, even if online petitions or who you vote for, understanding the consequences of sometimes now on these election ads, whether it's for a proposition or for a politician, a candidate themselves, you'll see on the bottom of the screen who's funding it.
Yeah, and that's important.
And sometimes I think we activists think, well, if the name of who's funding this ad is on there, that would be enough for people to realize who's behind it.
No, because then you still have to do the extra research. Even as an activist, you always have to do the extra research because you don't know what group or who they represent.
And so now when I suspect that when you'll see that language up on TV ads and you see these names, you will now have heard those names, you'll understand what those entities are and understand their agenda.
Well, yeah, hopefully we get that sort of making a murderer effect, but actually here you can be more effective because that was a court case. It's very hard to do anything about a decision a judge has. But with this, we're talking about legislation and congressmen and people you can sway and write into.
And this is preventative. I mean, hopefully, if we take this far enough, we can get a lot of people out of prison who are unfairly there.
Or just the state prisons, get rid of the privatization there, like we're doing on the federal level.
Yeah. So I would urge you to see it. I know I'm going to see it Friday night, and
we'll definitely find a way to talk about it on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, maybe even next week when we come back for another episode. Thank you for joining us. If in the meantime, before now and next week, you have a comment for us, you can tweet at us. I am Chelsea Galicia, at Chelsea Galicia.
I'm at Shaka Strong, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. I'd love to hear from you guys.
And see you next week, everyone.
Bye, y'all.
From executives Keven Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live. the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Hollywood redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.